Bikamo, marhaba. My name is Shadi Abou-Zahra. I work for the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, and I originally come from Egypt, so down the Nile from Nairobi. I've been many times to Kenya, but unfortunately this year, for known reasons, we're all not able to attend, which is very unfortunate, but I look forward to other opportunities. We have limited time today and an amazing panel, so I really want to give the floor to the panelists as quickly as possible. But I just want to give a bit of an overview of what we want to discuss today. Mobile access to the internet and to the digital world through mobile has really become the predominant approach, or it's quickly becoming that in many parts of the world, including in Africa. Many people might not even know a computer or use a computer, but have used a mobile phone meanwhile. And it's the main mean of communication. What does that mean for people with disabilities? How can they get equal access to all the technologies, all the digital media, the apps, the broadband, and so on, equally? And this is a very important concept because, again, access to the digital world and digital economy is just a basic human right recognized by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, recognizes access to information, including digital information, as a human right. So we need to respect that, and we need to work towards that and make sure that everybody has equal access. The World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, for those who don't know, is an international standards body that develops the core standards for the web, like HTML and CSS and many other such technologies. But we also focus on making the web international, different languages. We focus on privacy and security, but also very much on accessibility, one of the main areas. And many of you may know the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, was mentioned yesterday several times, also in the keynote from Haben Girma. And that's an international standard that defines accessibility for digital content, including websites and mobile apps. So it is applicable to mobile apps and mobile more generally. We need to evolve these kinds of aspects. It's not just about standards and guidelines. It's about how we propagate this in the society, in the community, among developers and vendors, but also how we can ensure that people with disabilities have access to these products and services. Anyway, that's enough from me just to set the stage and give a bit of a background of what we're discussing today. I really want to move to the panel because we have such an exciting panel, and to not do the mistakes I usually do, which is forget to say things about the panelists. I will let them introduce themselves, and we'll go around the room with just very brief introductions, and then we have some questions. I should remind you to use the Slido app if you have questions. We'll be taking that also and weaving it into the discussion with the panel. So first, Clara, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Clara Aranda, and I'm an Insights Manager for the GSMA Assistive Tech Program. This is part of our larger program called Mobile for Development, which is funded by the FCDO. And during the past year and a half, I have led our research on the digital inclusion of people with disabilities.
Thank you, Clara. Sitoyo, if you can please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sitoyo Lopokoiyit. I work at Safaricom, and my role is the Chief Officer of Financial Services, and this is where M-Pesa sits. I do dual roles because I'm also the CEO for M-Pesa Africa, a new drive towards consolidating our M-Pesa business across our footprints. And really happy to be here. M-Pesa is all about transforming lives, and M-Pesa is designed for all, not just, so we design products and services that drive inclusivity across our markets. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have many questions for you, like for all the rest of the panel. Karen?
Good morning. My name is Clara Smit, and I work for Vodacom South Africa. I head up our accessibility office, and I need to partner closely with all the business units within our organization to make sure that we keep disability in mind up front and that we provide accessible products and services to our customers with disabilities.
Brian?
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Kemler. I'm a product manager at Google, and I work on Android accessibility. And our role on Android accessibility is trying to make Android the most accessible mobile platform out there.
As I told you, I promised an amazing panel, and I think the organizers have really brought together an amazing panel. So let's go around the room. Again, a reminder for people to use the Slido app for questions and answers that I will be weaving in. But starting with a kickoff round, Clara, you did a lot of research internationally, but also specifically the focus, the data you collected, the case studies on mobile usage in Kenya and other countries nearby would be really interesting for the audience. If you can tell us more about the research work that you've done with a focus on Kenya and Eastern Africa.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Shadi. So when we started this work, when we started with the question on, what is the digital inclusion of people with disabilities, we realized that there wasn't a lot of data out there. There wasn't a lot of research done, particularly when you look at the global south, when you look at low and middle income countries. So we started last year with 2 countries, Kenya and Bangladesh, where we conducted a large quant and qual research. Focusing very specifically in Kenya, we conducted 1,000 surveys and 40 interviews with people with disabilities. And we wanted to explore what we know as the digital inclusion pathway, the mobile user journey. So we started looking at mobile access, mobile ownership, then we look at how people with disabilities use mobile phones and how they use mobile internet. And we found some really, really interesting things. So the first thing that we found is that there is a mobile disability gap in ownership. So people with disabilities are less likely to own a mobile phone than non-disabled people by around 10% in a country like Kenya. Kenya has a quite mature mobile ecosystem. So this is different. This number tends to differ in other countries, but that's the case in Kenya. The majority of people own a feature phone or a basic phone. So around 70% of people own this type of phones, which means that a lot of people are missing out from the benefits that a smartphone could offer in terms of accessibility features. When we look at how people use mobile phones, we see many differences, but in terms of mobile internet use, for instance, in general, we don't see a lot of differences between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. But people do report different challenges, different access barriers. So in our case, when we did our research, we found that access to accessible handsets is a big barrier. Affordability of handsets, affordability of data is another big barrier. Relevance. A lot of people see mobile phones as good communication tools. They use them, but many people with disabilities, their caregivers, their relatives do not see mobile phones as assistive technologies. They don't see them as these technologies that can bridge access to many services that are inaccessible at the moment, like education, healthcare, and many other things. Knowledge and skills. So a lot of people don't know about accessible handsets. A lot of people do not know about accessibility features. So they just don't know how to use these phones. And safety and security is another challenge. And we will hear a little bit more about the changes that were done in M-Pesa. But a lot of services, a lot of mobile services haven't been designed for inclusion. And they really pose a lot of challenges in people, putting sometimes their own safety at risk. So when we look at these barriers, we also see that when these barriers are addressed, the ways in which people use mobile are not that different. So I said that in general, when we look at mobile internet usage, there are not big differences between, this is in Kenya, between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. But when we disaggregate by different disability segments, we see that, for instance, people with visual impairment or people with hearing impairment that own a smartphone, they have more daily usage of mobile internet than non-disabled smartphone owners. So this is for us a really promising, the data is really promising, and it really drives us to keep working on trying to find ways in which the barriers to digital inclusion can be addressed. And part of our work at the moment is, of course, we are continuing this research, trying to explore the mobile disability gap in other countries, in other regions. And we are also at the moment, so we have launched an innovation fund to try to find innovations that are addressing these barriers. And we are also launching the principles to try to bring the mobile industry together towards driving the digital inclusion of people with disabilities. But our work so far has been really insights-led. So our insights inform all these different actions towards innovation and the principles.
Thank you, Clara. This is so exciting and offers such a broad spectrum. We heard here aspects of not only the content and the services, but the hardware, the knowledge, the understanding, societal issues, and the culture really of digital technology, which is, I think, also a factor. We focus very often on the technical aspects and forget the cultural and the social aspects. Yeah. Sitoyo, we just heard about M-Pesa, and M-Pesa is very well known and has been around for a long time. But at the same time, mobile accessibility is a fairly new concept in Africa, and in many parts of the world, in fact. Can you tell us more about specifically the activities that you've worked on M-Pesa and what it is you're specifically doing to make it more accessible?
No, thanks, Shadi. And let me just start from where Clara left off. And she did talk about accessibility for the devices. And here it's great to have Brian on the call from Google, because we did work with Google. We did meet them in South Africa some time back and did a workshop on accessibility of devices. And last month we did launch with Google. Basically, it's a credit product that uses M-Pesa technology and Google technology to give access to 4G smartphones at less than 20 cents US dollars a day. So now we're democratizing the access of smartphones in the region of $30 to $40, but you're paying less than 20 US dollar cents per day, and you have access to all the products and services that a smartphone does provide. So this is a key driver in Kenya. Smartphone access is about 40%, and Clara has mentioned that some of the tools that we use are not as efficient as we can. In Safaricom, we did launch last month M-Pesa on USSD, which is more intuitive and it's more dynamic, and this is very much linked to what we're doing on inclusion. So let me just take you back first on the journey of M-Pesa. So in 2007, when we launched M-Pesa, the key thing was about transforming lives, and that's a deep ethos we have on our purpose-led journey that we have as an organization. So we launched M-Pesa in 2007. Financial inclusion of what we were targeting. It's at 23%. Today, it's at 84% and growing. So while that has been great, what we've actually noticed is financial health of the communities that we live in has actually deteriorated. So we've switched now our focus to financial health, and financial health is about providing products and services to the community that enable them absorb shocks. And the COVID crisis has been a big impact in showing the need to actually have our community have financial health. But from a purpose-led, M-Pesa is for all. So in Kenya, we do have 1.4 million visually impaired customers on M-Pesa. Yesterday, actually, the Ministry of Health released some statistics saying there's 7.8 million Kenyans who are visually impaired. So you can see there's a big population that is excluded, and we need to do various initiatives to drive that. One, what we've done is voice biometrics. So basically, visually impaired can use our IVR to actually make transactions digitally, which before they used to go to an M-Pesa agent and actually have to have somebody enable them, and that's the security aspect that Clara mentioned. So we have rolled that one out. We did partner with a South Korean company to deliver a dot braille watch. So this enables them to actually access their messages privately. We did create the dot braille watch as well as a dot braille tablet that is actually heavily subsidized by Safaricom and available across all our Safaricom products and services. We have tied all our initiatives to the SDG. I'm personally evaluated when I meet my boss. That's the first thing I'm actually checked on, not on performance. That's the last thing we look at. And all our products and services about impact. If it's got impact and it's empowering to society, we do it. And I've spent, I think the last product, we spent $21 million without a business case. And because we knew that that product was going to be impactful, and not very many businesses will be willing to do that. So there is a lot that we're doing. There's commitment, and I know my colleague will be talking in different sessions about how we employ our staff. We've got a target of at least minimum of 5% of our staff should be people living with disability across our businesses. So we do have a purpose-led agenda that is to ensure that everyone within the organization is focusing on this inclusivity agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so interesting to hear also about the business case aspects and the drive here. I mean, this is, in my personal view, the best thing that can happen for accessibility is that it really becomes a market or a recognized market. It is a market, becomes a recognized market and a business driver. So staying on that topic, Karen, would love to hear from you about how you ensure at Vodacom that the work that you do, that what you deliver is accessible to people with disabilities.
Thank you. Vodacom, since its inception, had the vision to connect everyone, inclusive of people with various disabilities. We realized that as a mobile network operator, we have a huge role to play to promote the digital inclusion of disabled consumers. It is a known fact that almost every aspect of modern life is influenced by digital technology. Our journey to provide inclusive technologies and processes started in 2004 when we launched the very first ever Nokia speaking phones for visually impaired persons in South Africa and Africa. By launching these accessible devices, we became aware that technology as an enabler improved the independence of people with disabilities and has indeed become a lifeline for most disabled persons. Accessible hardware and software is critical to ensure that disabled consumers can connect to a network and use the internet independently, which will enable socio-economic participation. Nowadays, phone manufacturers are doing a great job by including accessibility features into the operating systems of the devices and ensuring that apps are accessible. Besides selling accessible devices to consumers, we also promote their digital literacy by partnering and empowering disabled persons organizations. We support their smart digital training centers by training their staff, their disabled staff, to present accessible and digital courses to disabled consumers. We value the lives of disabled persons and regard them as a viable consumer segment. How can you deliver to a segment if they're not visible and if you don't acknowledge them? The South African census statistics shows that 7.5% of the South African population is disabled, which is approximately 3 million people, whilst the World Health Organization state that there's about 300 million people in Africa. By including the disabled consumer segments and not overlooking them, we expand our diverse customer base, which have a positive impact on our bottom line. Customers with disabilities reside in the communities we serve, and therefore we focus deliberately on ensuring that our technology and services are accessible for these segments. By doing this, we ensure that disabled consumers will not stay behind, but that they can become part of a connected society. When developing inclusive technology, our purpose-led culture assists us to view the needs of our disabled consumers through an empathy lens. We do not view them as charity cases, but we really, really regard them as consumers. And that's why, for example, our accessibility office is situated within the consumer business side of the organization. Therefore, it is important for us to ensure that we meet their needs as they pay for technology and services like all other people. We design our services, our apps, our website with disability in mind, and we partner with disabled users to assist us with user testing and giving input from the design phase. As part of our purpose-led strategy that Sitoyo mentioned also earlier, we have recently launched a social contract, which is a zero-rated platform that enables low-end customers to access information about education, health, and many other services for free. Our pricing transformation approach, furthermore, enables us to provide more affordable data and special deals for customers with disabilities. Low-cost entry smartphones assist to increase the uptake of mobile devices. Developing accessible technology goes beyond the selling of hardware. Ultimately, it's about selling experiences that makes a positive difference in the lives of customers with disabilities. And that, for me, as a disabled person myself, is so amazing to see how the lived experiences of disabled persons are indeed impacted by technology. In conclusion, the personal and authentic support from our CEO enables us as an organization to truly promote disability or digital inclusion, as it is only then that we can say that we are truly an inclusive company that aims to leave no one behind.
Thank you, Karen. And I think one of the leading goals of the disability community is nothing about us without us, and to be involved right at the table. And I think you show also a very interesting aspect of not only is accessibility and disability, the broader cultural aspect, but it also needs to be a company or an organizational culture as well. Excellent. Let's move on to Brian, and just reminding people to continue sending questions through the Slido app so that we can involve your perspectives and your questions as well. Now, Brian, Android is an incredibly important operating system across many devices, and including in Africa as well. Now, how can we ensure that this platform is more accessible and continues to be more accessible across Africa?
Great question. Thank you so much. So sort of baked into Google's mission is this notion of making the world's information universally accessible and useful. And I'm not sure we had like the accessibility pure angle in mind when we came up with that mission, but we take that mission to heart. And the way we view product development from the Android standpoint is Android's a platform, and as a platform, there are amazing opportunities and amazing, heavy responsibilities. And so when we build our when we build our platform and our products, we want to make sure that they work for everyone, because everyone wants to send an email, everyone wants to send an SMS, everyone wants to purchase something using their smartphone. And we don't think that just because somebody has a disability that they should have to get help from somebody else, or they should have to have specialized equipment or whatnot. That smartphone should just work and should just allow that person to be independent. And so as we look across the sort of span of disabilities, from users who have blindness, users who are low vision, we have a number of different products and services that we provide entirely for free as part of that platform, like TalkBack, which allows a blind user to interact with the Android device using only spoken output and gestural or braille type of input, which is really amazing when you think about it. And that user can do anything that a sighted user could do. So that's like really remarkable technology. And so independence is a key principle for us when we think about making the platform as accessible as possible. The other thing that's really an amazing opportunity with smartphones is it's not just about like, hey, how do we make the stuff on the device more accessible? How can we use the device to make the real world more accessible, right? Leveraging computer vision, automatic speech recognition, all of these different wonderful technologies that, oh, by the way, Google happens to be pretty good at. And can we apply them to unmet needs, be they accessibility needs, be they in more emerging markets such as Africa? And I'll give you a few examples of that. So last year we launched a product called Live Transcribe. And what Live Transcribe does is if I'm a deaf or hard of hearing person and I want to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't speak sign language and I don't want to get out a pen and write it, I can just pull out my phone and using automatic speech recognition, hear what my doctor is saying, what the guy at the shop is saying, what the person at the coffee store is saying, and that type of thing. And so using that technology, we make that capability available for free, and we ship it with all of our devices. We make it available to our OEM partners for free, like Vodacom, so they can ship it with their products and so forth. And when we build, I love what you said about like not building it without us. And so every one of our products or every one of our efforts and initiatives, we build in partnership with the accessibility community. So we build with the users for whom we're building. And that may be we have developers, engineers, designers with disabilities. We partner with institutions like Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., which is one of the world's foremost universities for deaf and hard of hearing people. And so, and so there's a lot more work to do, and we're definitely not perfect. We can definitely improve. And one of the things that I would love to see when I can get on a plane again is like us getting out and coming to Africa, coming to India, coming to, markets that we're simply not as close to, but that we want to be closer to. So just in the same way we build more expertise and more experience working with our accessibility community, we can do so in different parts of the world, because otherwise you just don't build things that are useful or relevant for users. I think the last thing I'd say is, because Android is a platform and developers build thousands or tens of thousands of apps, developers also have a special responsibility to make sure they build their apps in a way that are compatible with technologies like screen readers and so forth. And so spending a little bit extra time as a developer to just like go through those steps, especially early or in the beginning phase of development is going to make your product more accessible, more inclusive. And that's going to, I just say it's the right thing to do. So you should just do it. It's the right thing to do. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the business case. But that money in that business case should follow, because another thing that's very important is it's not just according to World Health Organization, about 15% of the planet, so about 1 billion people, have some type of disability, right? So that's a 15%, market, which is a big market, right? But it's also the market of everybody that those individuals interact with. It's their families, it's their friends, it's their neighbors, it's the businesses they work with. So that number is actually a much bigger number. So do it because it's the right thing, but I think the rewards will also be there as well.
That's a really good point there, Brian, and you touched on many aspects here that are really interesting. I think one of the things I just want to pull out here is the partnerships and working directly. This was actually a question that was posted on Slido. How do we work directly with people with disabilities and involve them in the process? And we did hear from different organizations, but it is something that is important. You also mentioned about the broader impact, the multiplier effect. When we make products more accessible, they become also easier to use for many more people. And one of the relationships here of just basic usability is people who are new to technology, but also older people, sometimes who are less comfortable with digital technology. And so I just want to go around the room very quickly because we don't have much more time left. But Clara, in your data, do you have any reflections on also older people with disabilities and the impact of aging that impacts all of us as we all get older and all develop limited limitations? Are there any thoughts from the data perspective here from your side?
So we did capture, we had, in our survey, we look at adults over the age of 18. So we did capture a little bit, the sector of the population over the age of 60 plus. And what we saw from the data and the analysis that we present in the report, we don't provide the age disaggregated data, but what we saw in the data is that many of them have very, very, very basic phones. So their communications with the phone, they tend to use very basic services like SMS or calls. And often the communications are in one direction, so their families communicate with them as opposed to them being able to use the technology to whatever they want to do. There are different cases. Of course, you find people that have smartphones and they know how to use them and all that. But in our research, I think something that is quite critical, and I think it touches the points that Karen, Sitoyo, and Brian mentioned, is the relevance of digital skills. So regardless of the age, is knowing, first of all, being aware that accessibility features exist, being aware that mobile phones can be accessible, that they have these features that people can use, and knowing how to use accessibility features. So we have also developed a module on mobile internet skills training. MIST is called Mobile Internet Skills Training Toolkit, that focuses on accessibility features, because even if we have technologies that are accessible, people are not, they may have the phone and they don't know that the features are there. So we want to try to drive this, regardless of the age, we want to try to drive this a little bit more.
Thank you. So also the data is showing that it's not, quote unquote, only the over 1.3 billion people with disabilities, 15 to 20% of the market, but actually a far broader benefits here to many other members of the community. To the other panelists, and again, just very briefly going around, I'll combine the two questions that came in. One is, how do you find the disabled customers to test your products with? That's the one question. And the other is, what standards do you use, and how can people find standards for Africa to develop accessible products and services? And we'll go Sitoyo, then Karen, then Brian. Very briefly, please. Sitoyo, please.
That's a really good question, and I think it goes to working with your stakeholders. We do work with the Kenya Union of the Blind in Kenya. We did sponsor and work with them on registration process. So there is a USSD code for registration, and we go with them across the country to register persons who are visually impaired, but as well as and the partnership. Clara has mentioned some of the research that's done by GSMA and so on. I think that's a really good place to start, is working with associations and relevant stakeholders in the industry, and then testing this product. I said our staff are an important part of it, and it is also interacting and testing with them to ensure that the products and services that we deliver also are relevant and are making an impact to their lives. But there's just one aspect in terms of inclusivity that I wanted to mention, and this is related to the current health crisis and economic crisis due to COVID and the impact that's happening on them. So as M-Pesa, the first stage was what we call the response stage, which is in March, we zero-rated most of our transactions on M-Pesa. We did provide more float into the market for people to be able to access financial services. Some of the banks closed their branches, but we actually accelerated M-Pesa branches now to well over 200,000 branches. We did substantially contribute to the COVID fund. But I think what is also important now, as the economies begin to open, is the rebuild phase. We've seen a devastating impact on the SME and the micro SMEs within our ecosystem, and then the drive towards cashless. So what we see is the drive towards cashless has been accelerated by 2 to 3 years in the last 6 months. So there is the velocity as well as the number of transactions in our ecosystem has gone up 20-30%, and we are seeing more businesses, both SME and micro SMEs, refusing cash. And then, so how do we ensure that the third phase, which is the reimagine phase, how will inclusivity be in the next 2 years, and what products and services? Because there's a massive shift in customer behavior in the last 6 months that has not been seen, and it's looking at our data and correlating with that and working with stakeholders to start looking at, okay, what are the shifts that need to happen? I think the demand for access to smartphone has just accelerated tremendously over the last, and then it's how do we combine those two areas to be able to continue providing products and services that make an impact to the society. Thank you.
Thank you. So along the lines of turning every challenge into an opportunity and the digitization push that the government is actually giving us. Yeah. Karen, please go ahead.
Shadi, I just want to say that personal relationships with disabled people's organizations are absolutely critical. We work very closely with all of them. And what we do is we don't just work with them when we decide that we want to develop a new product or service and then we contact them. We have positive relationships with them all the time. We visit them, we support some of their events, we open smart DG centers, and it's really to have that continuous relationship and an honest and open one. And that also creates trust amongst them because it gives their members, the liberty to come to us and to say, you know what, this is what you've done, it's not really working. So they really give us honest and feedback, and that's very important for us in our relationship. And then at the accessibility office that I head up, we've got personal relationships with a lot of our customers. They will email us with feedback. We don't mind giving out our email addresses to them. So we do a lot of communication to our customers with disabilities. We know a lot of them in the market, And I think that personal relationship that we've got, that's really crucial. And we can go to a war with them, you know. So, and that really benefits us as the company as well as them, because they give us the input, and at the end of the day, we can develop appropriate services and they can have a good experience.
Very good point. Yeah, partnerships. Brian.
So we're fortunate enough to be a big company that has a pretty unique culture. And so while we use and reference external standards like WCAGs and so forth, we have so many diverse users inside of Google. And I'll just relay a story with a recent launch. So sometimes we actually have, blind, deaf, hard of hearing, all sorts of different engineers. And sometimes they're not even on our accessibility team. And so we were working with an engineer out of our one of our offices in Australia who works on ads, who is a Braille coder and Braille user. And he wanted just basically a keyboard inside of TalkBack. And so he built a prototype. He came to our team. He asked us on the TalkBack team, hey, is this something you guys would be interested in? We're like, yeah. And so we worked with him. We evolved his prototype, and we launched this virtual Braille keyboard back in April. And so that's like just a wonderful type of collaboration. Of course, we can't do that all of the time. And so in those cases, similar to what Karen was saying, we partner with, we have trusted tester groups, so we'll have 25, 50, 100 users who get early access to a product. Sometimes we partner even more deeply, as we do with Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., who has advised us and really helped build many of our deaf and hard of hearing products like Live Caption, Live Transcribe, Live Caption for calls, with their expertise, not only as users, but as thought leaders and computer scientists and researchers in the world. So we're very fortunate to be able to leverage that kind of bench of talent.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and an honor being with such a knowledgeable panel. I think we could go on for hours, but we have to close. We are already behind time. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And thank you also for the organizers, in particular for Irene and her fabulous team for organizing Inclusive Africa. Hope to see you in person, as Brian was saying, when we can travel again in person. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.